Same old trouble, villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same.
Thank you, Vandello, and welcome once again to Graphically Novel. My name is Josh Wafta, aka Fallout Fury, and with me is my stuffed beaver. My Mr. B. It's Bear.
I was not expecting the stuffed beaver. It's like the Spanish Inquisition.
No one ever expects
right?
the stuffed beaver.
And with us, the lovely and talented, our Poison Ivy. the brains of this fucking outfit is Ms. Jennifer Howland.
Thank you, Bear. That's a lovely introduction.
Yes, well, as your front and back gardens both attest, you are very much Poison Ivy.
I am. I will admit it.
I honestly would have expected more skulls in the garden than it'd be.
Just wait for it. There are heads right now.
Okay, well.
Yeah. And I am the fortunate person on the team that gets to introduce our guest every week. And this week we have a very special guest returning to the show. Our dear friend, Loopy.
Hi!
Yay!
Jenny Smith-Pulsipher.
Yes, thank you.
I did get that right?
You did. We joke that it rhymes with Lucifer.
Yes. Which...
So thank you very much for coming back on the show, and we would expect none other than our dear friend Loopy to be here for this show, because
we are doing Harleen Quinzel. We're doing the girl herself. Now, this is the third in kind of a series throughout seasons, because we started by doing Birds of Prey, and then and that was with Kat Espin. Then we had Loopy on for the Suicide Squad, the good one. And then now we are finishing it out with the Harley Quinn cartoon and the graphic novel Out on the Town? Hot in the Town.
Hot in the City.
Hot in the City. Thank you. I was like, I had it somewhere.
A temperature and a name for a large group of people living together in a geographical region.
Metropolis? Wait, what?
But yes, so this we have talked about Harley a few times, but now we're really gonna dig into her, because this comic
is straight up on the woman herself.
Yes, with
my girl.
That's right.
She's been my girl since the 90s.
I was about to say, as long as I've known you, that you have been the go-to person if I had a Harley question.
Mm-hmm.
And this comic was specifically her New 52 comic. So it was when, let's see, this is 3 reboots ago in DC.
Yeah.
And it was Harley getting her own series without the Joker and going off on her own and living her own life, which was great. And there are a lot of similarities between this and the cartoon, which we will be covering in the first season, even though as we record this, the third season is dropping episodes. We have not watched this week's yet.
Oh my God, I have to I will not spoil anything, but this week's episode of the Harley Quinn cartoon was my favorite to date.
Oh,
wow.
Amazing.
So, very good episode this week. Some really, really excellent cameos and some of my favorite side characters. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to it. But let's start with the comic. Obviously, Loopy, you have read this before. You suggested it for this episode. What led you to say this is the one?
So it's funny because I had real trouble not overthinking your question. Because when it comes to Harley comics, there are a bunch that I like a lot better than this one. But if asked the question, what would you recommend to fans of the new TV series, the new cartoon series? This would have to be the one I recommend specifically for people who are big fans of the TV series, because And it's funny because I always want to truncate Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmietti just to Amanda Palmer. And I'm sure that Neil Gaiman's wife would love to take credit for it. But that's not them. But they've really, really redefined Harley in a lot of ways. And they set a baseline like tone and vision for the character that is, I mean, absolutely directly translated into the cartoon. I mean, you can just see it all over the comic book, but it's also really informed a lot of the other stuff we talked about. You see some of those same inspirations in you see a lot of them in Bird of Prey.
Yes.
And the Suicide Squad as well.
So let's go into the people reading it for the first time. I was not one of them. I had actually, as I got into it, I had an early graphic novel that didn't have the issue 0 that was in this one, which we'll get into.
We will. The only thing I really want to talk about in issue 0, because mostly it's a hot mess, but there's one panel that's very important in that issue 0. And it's funny because I was like, surely I have this graphic novel. I know I do. And I like tore apart my shelves looking for it. And then I realized I bought it in single issues when it was coming out in real time. So I had to go back and read my singles, and I had to go check and see which of my singles were in this novel.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I need to remember to go and grab my singles out of the 22-year-old's closet.
Yeah. But the cool thing about that, in pulling out the singles, I got to really revisit and enjoy their glorious covers. I mean, the covers are one of the things that's just awesome about this particular run. So that was kind of a silver lining.
So, Bear, what did you think about this graphic novel?
You're looking straight at me as we were talking about issue 0, and I was just like, oh. Okay, now we got everybody just to take this from the perspective of a dude that did not growing up reading a ton of comics, and especially did not growing up reading a ton of DC at all, and got this massive, there's an entire issue of we're just going to break the fourth wall while essentially Bugs Bunny interviews his artist.
Yes.
And I was just like, oh God, please don't let the rest of the graphic be like this, please, for the love of God. It got better. I'll give it to you. It got better. The first comic, the first whole thing just kind of really, let's just put it this way, I'm glad I was doing nothing at work and got paid to read it.
That issue 0 is a hot mess, and I forgot. Honestly, it was part of the series, but I said I wanted to talk about one panel in it.
Yes.
And there's one panel right in the beginning where Harley basically says, oh, I get my own comic. This is going to appeal to everybody. The guys are going to want to look at me. The young girls are going to want to grow up to be me. And the grown women are going to want to just be able to act like me. And I was like, wow, if that wasn't like the most like self-aware
right
comment I could possibly hear. So yeah, read that one panel, then move on.
Then move on to the rest of the comic.
Find that in there and then move on.
Unless you're interested in just geeking out on all the different styles
artists
of art.
I mean,
and the comic art that's out there.
I'll give it to you. As far as artwork goes, if somebody would have warned me, I'd have been like, okay, well, I'm just going to ignore this and imagine it's a Bugs Bunny skit and just look at the great art, because there's amazing art in there.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got Paul Dini to write a panel.
Yeah.
Yep.
For a page, which was cool.
Jen, what did you think of this comic?
I liked it. I liked it a lot because I really love the animated series. And so I was very happy to see some of the side characters.
Mr. Cyborgman?
Yes! I love Cy. So yes, it was, I enjoyed it. There are some comics, especially DC, that we have read that have been kind of sloggy that I've not really enjoyed. But I thought this was really good. It moved along. It didn't, dwell on any one thing where I think that's where they kind of get stuck in an area.
You know, I think that that's a comic book problem in general, but explaining one concept for more than one page tends to, I will forever and always compare it to the scene in the third Matrix movie with the Oracle at the basketball or at the park, where I understood what she was telling Neo in the first 2 minutes, but the actual scene lasted 15. So by the end, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah.
Did I actually understand what you were saying?
Right. Because you're doing a really good job to tell me that I don't.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, definitely moving and very Harley. You know, in its...
Yeah. It's fun and it's funny. It's lighthearted. It's really irreverent. And like I said, it's kind of foundational for the Harley we're seeing in all the other media right now. There are other trade collections of this run that I think tell a little bit of a better story, but you wouldn't appreciate them if you hadn't read this one.
Agreed. Yeah. Totally agreed. So let's let's move away from the comic because we would like people to read it and go into this cartoon that is fucking crazy.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
It is.
It is so Harley Quinn. I mean, you couldn't do a PG version and have it really.
Well, I mean, you could. It's called the animated series, but that didn't just focus like on Harley. That's where she came from.
Right.
You know, but even then she was always pushing the envelope.
Right.
Which they, in that issue 0, actually one of my favorite little pieces was the I forgot my line, and they're like
Quinn, don't you want to rev up your Harley? Yeah.
Yes. Which is
that was eerie.
Yes.
It was eerie how well you did that.
She's
I've been doing Harley's voice for a long time.
But yeah, I enjoyed that part because it harkens back to Harley from the beginning was not necessarily a kid-friendly character, but she was introduced in Batman the Animated Series, which was ostensibly for children. Whether or not, looking back on it, it really was, that argument can be made. But definitely one of the most, because she's the Joker that you can actually like, I mean, same kind of motivations, had the same the beginning part, but has blossomed into something that wasn't just a female Joker. It is a survivor of abuse, somebody that's gone through, and Harley's message now, which I love, is you don't want to emulate the Joker-Harley relationship.
I honestly think that Harley is probably the closest approximation that we have to Punisher.
Huh.
She's very anti-hero now.
What she has evolved into, not where she started from.
Right.
What she has evolved into, I think, is much more of a Punisher aspect than a straight up villain. Like she wants to be. She wants to be a supervillain
with a giant red stamp. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I like, because one of the things, like we talked about this a teeny bit in the Suicide Squad issue, but like for me, the thing that has always appealed to me about Harley is that sort of fantasy of just breaking all the rules and doing my own thing and being myself, no matter what anybody else has to say about it, and being a total badass along the way. I don't like Harley when she's not too villainous, right? Like I like it when she's pulling out the bat and beating heads.
Which this cartoon and this comic has plenty of.
They deliver on that for sure.
Absolutely. So I guess what were your first impressions? I'll go around and I'll start with Loopy, but what were your first impressions when you first watched the first episode of this cartoon?
Eye-popping. Oh my goodness. Like I actually, they took it further than I thought they would, which is really saying something. But God, I love the art so much. I love the fact that they just focus on Harley so much. I love their cast of sidekicks, and I love their callbacks to the comics in there as well. So, but yeah, my goodness, when you just need 30 minutes of watching Harley beat heads because you couldn't, this is a cartoon.
Absolutely. Jen, you adore this cartoon.
I do, and the first time we watched it, eye popping is a really great way to describe it, because I was like, holy cow, they really went there. They did. And before we did this show, I really had a very limited knowledge and understanding of the Suicide Squad, of Harley. I was aware, but didn't really know much. But it's the show, the TV show that I love King Shark.
He's so good. He's
I don't
so
know
good.
that I've seen an incarnation of King Shark that I haven't liked.
Oh no, it's Ron Funches voicing King Shark that does it for me, because it is brilliant casting.
I mean, even in Suicide Squad, though, when we had
Sylvester
when we had
Stallone
Sly doing it, yeah, like that was. I still like that.
It was amusing, but Ron Funches as King Shark is it for me.
Well, I mean, just the entirety of the voice cast. I mean, we talk a lot, or right now there's a big conversation about celebrity voice actors versus professional voice actors, which I think that this is a good focus point, because Kaylee Cuoco, who does Harley's voice, best known for The Flight Attendant and Big Bang Theory, is an executive producer on this. Like, came on and really liked the character and wanted to do it, but it's her first big voiceover role. Whereas then you have Lake Bell. Lake Bell was an actress first, but does a lot of voice work. I knew Lake Bell from Boston Legal because
Boston Legal,
Denny Crane. But then you have people like Alan Tudyk. Alan Tudyk is just an actor.
Listen, I don't care what you put Alan Tudyk in, you're going to watch this thing.
Right. We will get back to a lot more of Alan Tudyk later in our episode on Resident Alien, and how that entire show does not fucking work if it's anyone but Alan Tudyk in that role. But Ron Funches is a comedian, another person that he has a very distinctive voice though. And then you have Tony Hale. And Tony Hale, who does Dr. Psycho, he does Faust, he does a lot of the voices on this. Huge voice actor. I mean, Tony Hale is a professional voice artist. And then Christopher Maloney doing Commissioner Gordon. Perfect.
Oh my God.
Once again, the
Just
voice
as
fits.
a strung out caffeine addict, half psycho himself,
Right.
James Gordon.
Yes. Jim Rash, who you may know from Community as the Dean. When the Riddler shows up, he's the Riddler's voice. And again, just finding the right voice to that. But when they need multiple voices or people not to sound like themselves, then they get professional voice actors. So, I mean, this one kind of skates that line, as opposed to the DC Super Pets movie that people are up in arms about because it's just a bunch of actors, movie actors voice working a cartoon. So, I mean, I think in this situation it works, but what do you guys think?
I'm going to say something that'll make people mad, but I like Kaylee as Harley Quinn better than I like Tara Strong as Harley.
Wow, that's
Sounds like somebody's going for a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tara Strong, who is an award-winning voice actress across the board, and she's voiced Harley in
Harley's original voice. Yeah.
No, that's
Oh,
Arlene
I'm sorry.
Sorkin. That's Arlene Sorkin, but Tara Strong kind of took the torch from Eileen Sorkin when she stopped doing it. Tara does Harley's voice in the really fantastic Arkham video games,
Okay.
and several of the DC animated movies. But I think Tara plays Harley too dumb and too gimmicky, almost a little childlike, and it really grates on me the wrong way. And now when I see other animated Harleys, I hear Kaylee's voice in my head instead.
And that's entirely fair, considering this is supposed to be a woman with a PhD, regardless of how crazy she's gone in the interim.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which we get into a lot in this comic. But yes, I can understand what you're saying, Loopy. Like, I hadn't thought of it that way, but especially once you get to Arkham City, that Harley is, because she even has her own DLC, but she's a one-note joke in that mostly.
Yeah, her costumes are great, but other than that, like, and we're talking like Mark Hamill voices the Joker in those. Come on, like everything else about those Arkham games is phenomenal, but I don't like Tara's voice work.
I can understand that. Bear, what are your thoughts on professional voice work versus bringing in bigger names? You're our media guy.
I'm the media guy, but I honestly don't do a whole ton of animated stuff. I think the work that they've been doing here, it's kind of like, I mean, I didn't actually realize that Kelly was the executive producer on this, and I think she's doing great things. It's kind of like when you found out that the Muppets were coming back, and what's his
Jason Segel.
Jason Segel, yeah,
Who, yeah,
right, is doing, is running that whole show, and I'm just like, really? You like How I Met Your Mother? You're Jason Segel, and then you watch it, and you're just like, oh, this is so good.
But then you also had to have watched Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which is where that whole progression came from, because he had the Dracula puppet musical in that.
See that, but okay.
You haven't seen Forgetting Sarah Marshall?
No,
oh, it's brilliant.
Listen, I've tried to avoid your hobby movies for as long as I've known you.
Oh, it's so good. Jen, thoughts on voice actors?
I think that this show does a good balance of choosing the right. And if you look, there are several, like Alan Tudyk, he voices 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14 different character shows.
Because that is that man's range.
Right.
Yes.
But he's not the only one. I mean, Lake Bell
Right.
has like 10 to her name. You know, I think that they have done a great job of choosing people not because they're a famous actor, but inviting them to do something that maybe they really want to do. I mean, and Alan Tudyk isn't the only one who is well known not as a voice actor, who has taken on several. I mean, even Christopher Maloney has 4 different characters to his credit.
Michael Ironside, Wayne Knight, like there's a mess of high-end actors in here that, you know, are still just doing voice acting, and you would have never known.
Right. But also, like, you know, Wanda Sykes. When Wanda Sykes starts talking as the Queen of Fables, you know it's Wanda Sykes.
Right.
Like, she's not trying to disguise her voice. And it adds to that character, because you're like, oh, in my mind's eye, I can see Wanda Sykes having fun with this, right? You know, Alfred Molina coming in and doing Mr. Freeze. Again, you know, that voice, you're like, oh, okay. It's almost like a subtle joke without saying a joke. But yeah, I guess I land mostly on I think that this falls more into the acceptable world, because it's a mix. It's definitely giving professional voice actors a job, because there are tons of people that do voices for this, and a lot of them are voice actors, and then once in a while you'll have a cameo or a little piece by, you know, somebody that you're just going to recognize their voice.
Just has the right voice for the job. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that comes from, you know, having a good producer that knows who to put in there for the task at hand.
Right. We need an older Jewish man to be Cyborgman. Oh, look, Jason Alexander.
Right?
Like, you know, because again, the first time he speaks, you're like, oh my God,
there's
that's
like
Jason
3
Alexander.
generations of people that are going to be like, is that?
Right.
And that's all they're going to say. Is that? And then they're going to turn and watch the rest of the episode.
Right. But I do, to move from that, I watched, because I did extra work for this episode,
Ooh.
I watched some interviews that Kaylee Cuoco and Lake Bell have been doing for this new season. And on YouTube, go and look it up, because first of all, they're hilarious together. But second of all, they can't turn off the swearing when talking about Harley Quinn. I watched an Entertainment Tonight interview where like it got bleeped so much at the end. Kaylee Cuoco's like, "Can you use any of this?" And they left that in. But they have there are apparently only a certain number of each swear word allowed per episode, and the cast members fight over who gets to have them.
Okay, so right then and there, that gives the show my heart.
Yes.
And I mean, that was one of the few things, like, this was just, when I started watching it, I was like, this is just another animated, you know, it was like, what was the last one that we did? Young Justice? Yeah, where I was just like...
This is very different than Young Justice.
I was going to say, like, oh my God.
It's absolutely very different from Young Justice, but mainly the reason why that I was like, whereas Young Justice was like, while I'm watching it for the episode, I'm just like on my phone and I'm fucking around and I'm just like looking stuff up or I'm working on something for a D&D game. And with this, it was just like, all of a sudden there's something really relevant. Like they make a reference to, they made so many relevant like pop culture references.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Dropped F-bombs left and right.
Yep.
And I'm just like when they're like, no, this is not Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind. You can't just rewrite your brain. And I'm just like, okay, I gotta put my phone down.
Yeah.
Right? Like, where did that reference come from?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Loopy. I know these two are not as big into it, but that's why I love Mystery Science Theater 3000, is a lot of the references that they'll pull out for one-time jokes are like, if you don't get it, you just don't get it. Like, the early seasons were a lot of like golden age of Hollywood riffs and jokes that I didn't get until I was older. But I love when a joke is dropped in there and it's like unapologetic. It's like either you get it or you don't.
Well, and that was one of my notes for this podcast. I was going to say, you kind of have to buckle in for the humor because it's sort of a double-edged sword because there is a very, very broad range of humor. And some of the jokes are going to land for you personally, and some of them will not. And some of them might even just be a little like, ugh. But the ones that land for you personally, you're going to be rolling around on the couch laughing. So just kind of be prepared for like a little hit and miss humor because it's not just for any one taste.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, there's plenty of like, you know, there's not a ton of dick and fart jokes, but they're in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But at the same time, like Bear said, they're eternal.
Right? They're making they're making shots at Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Right. and then there's like rom-com jokes in there that I'm like, I get that. And I look over at Jen, and she's like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously an action movie.
Right.
You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just it seems to me like this cast is just having the time of their life with it. And so that's the other thing is in one of the interviews that I watched, Kaylee Cuoco and Lake Bell, they hadn't met before they did the interview because they're in their own home recording studios sending in their lines. And so they don't even work off each other, which I found insane because the way they cut it is so back and forth, especially between Harley and Ivy.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about the Harley Quinn show, I did want to break this down a little bit. Is this the best Poison Ivy that we've?
Well, I'm going to say it's a Poison Ivy you don't expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's not a sex pot, right?
No.
Yeah.
So and that's refreshing. And I don't want to spoil the current season, but I will say they lean into her academic side.
Indeed, yes.
Which I think is really cool because that's something, you know, people remember that Harley's supposed to be a doctor, but they often forget that Poison Ivy is one too.
Yeah. Well, basically anybody in Gotham with a PhD turns out to be a villain. So
yeah, it's like that meme that says, you know, stop joking that Bruce Wayne could solve all Gotham's problems with grants because whenever you give grants to people in Gotham City, they turn into super villains.
Right.
Right? Yeah. My favorite one of those is the, Batman is confronting Mr. Freeze and is like, why are you doing all this? He's like, I need money for the experiment to keep my wife alive. And he's like, you're Bruce fucking Wayne.
Right.
Fund his shit.
This could have been a problem that was solved without you putting the fucking cowl on.
Right?
Yeah. Poison Ivy is actually the one often used for that meme. It's like, well, I gave a grant to this, this clean energy, clean environment research station, and what I got was Poison Ivy.
Well, yes. Ivy's not necessarily wrong.
Just extreme. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I was thinking about it earlier, and I'm like, this might be the best Poison Ivy, because again, goes into facets of her character. She's not one note. She's not the woman going up against Batman that he could take out with a single punch. Like, she's a top tier dangerous ass villain, and this treats her like it.
You like this Poison Ivy because she is a superhero version or supervillain version of Daria.
Kind of.
So good.
Well, I think that she's also probably the character with depth, the show.
Yeah.
She's
I
the
agree with
person. She is, has more relatable thoughts, feelings than any other character. Relatable to what I mean.
Yeah, because we both kind of go, why?
Right.
Why
but
do you keep doing this, girl?
She also, she's dealing with imposter syndrome. She's, she thinks that the only way that she feels like she feels social anxiety. Mm-hmm. She is, thinks she's best when she's alone, and I think that she is the most relatable.
She also understands that when she goes out in public, some rando is going to come up and try and suddenly be, best friend / romance interest. Somebody's just going to come up and see if they can do a heist with me. Just like, oh, no, those people. Not necessarily the heist, but it's like, hey, we should do this together. No, let's just not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would agree.
And the other thing that I'm kind of noticing, thinking back, I know we're just dealing with season 1, and so I'll stick to that. But her progression and her plot through each season is kind of a highlight. I mean, I love watching Harley and all the stuff she gets into, but Harley at the end of the day doesn't seem to learn from the things, but Ivy actually has a progression, especially in the whole Kite Man thing that's starting to go on, and her relationship with Harley in the first season, trying to help her friend while also not just, which she could, tying her down with plant vines and hitting her with different pheromones until Harley just is fixed. She has the power to do that, but she sticks around and tries to help Harley just heal herself.
Tries to help shrink the shrink.
Yes.
That's kind of been true in their relationship all the way going back to the animated series. I just think you see it more clearly in the current cartoon.
Agreed.
And I think that might just be because there's less extraneous details to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're focusing on Harley here. This is not Batman the Animated Series. This is Harley Quinn. So we have that time to breathe and work with.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just it's not something that I had thought about before, because I mean, I knew that a lot of the progression, a lot of their relationship and their back and forth came from newer comic. And in the first season, mostly it's focusing on Harley getting over her breakup, which we've dealt with now in 3 different movies and this cartoon. And it was, I will say, for
3 or 4 episodes of
yeah. I mean, it is a progression throughout the first season, culminating in the finale.
The first, like the actual break was like,
oh yeah,
and being done with it.
Right.
Yes, we're still going to have issues.
Right.
Which progress through the rest of it.
Right. But by season 2, I mean, it's like a footnote, and by season 3, it's which that's the only spoiler I'm going to drop for future seasons, and that is only because, like I said, we've had 3 movies, and the first season of a cartoon series, of a TV series that was just this over and over and over again. So there is progression,
yes.
By the Suicide Squad, it was a little better, but I did, and we discussed it on that episode, I did feel that she had just somehow forgotten all of the lessons she learned in Birds of Prey and needed to be done all over again. Yeah, any other thoughts that anybody else wants to bring up? I've gone through my points.
I just was, again, when I saw the old trailer, I was like, yes, it's about time. And I'm not sure that it would have had Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie is also super, super passionate about Harley Quinn. And what I love is that you'll see callbacks to the comic book we were discussing at the beginning, in a lot of that too, like the roller derby thing.
Uh-huh.
Right. And the fact that basically I read an interview saying that Margot Robbie didn't know how to roller skate. She learned to roller skate because she knew Harley Quinn was into roller derby. And then of course now she's doing really ridiculous stunts on roller skates and birds, which means
right.
Just one more thing I kind of wanted to mention about the comic book, and then kind of how you'll see that kind of kicked up to 11 in the cartoon. There's a lot of implied backstory and canon from Harley Quinn going all the way back to the animated series, that they go from being implied to being explicit in the Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti comics, such as the fact that Harley's half Jewish, the fact that Harley's bisexual, a bunch of her like history with her family and stuff. You'll get into that in future issues of the comic book as well. And they put all of that stuff in the cartoon too, and they kick it to 11. So I like seeing some of that implied stuff become, canonically explicit. And if anybody's interested in spicy stuff, there is some really spicy, lovely art of Harley and Ivy in the comic book that we've looked at. So.
Pulled from Rule 34 websites.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for bringing that up, because it does remind me, it jarred my memory of two things. The first one being, because I've watched most recently season 3, but going back to season 1, there's an entire plot that deals with Dr. Psycho and the Me Too movement, which I fucking loved.
Yeah,
and
it was so good.
And it was, at the time that it came out too, it was very, obviously Me Too's been going on for 4 years at this point. But at season 1, it was definitely bringing the Me Too movement into the DC universe, which I fucking loved.
And I love every moment of it. And to go off on the tangent that we usually go off on that we haven't actually hit yet, just reminds me of, since we're still talking about the DC universe, how Superman can't date in the Me Too movement.
Right.
Like, everybody's like, oh my god, Henry Cavill, he's so amazing. He's the Witcher. And it's just like, you forgot about how, like, 3 or 4 years ago, he's like, Superman doesn't feel comfortable dating in the Me Too movement if he can't, make just sexual comments about women in a bar.
Oh, God. Yeah. Someday we'll get better. They'll just...
I mean, I have a hard time, like, looking at The Witcher, which is an amazingly well-written series, and just still looking at that and going, God, it's still fucking Henry Cavill. I don't want to like it, but I just can't not.
So, for season 4 of Harley Quinn, how many Ezra Miller jokes are there going to be?
Wow, oh my God, I was just reading news stories about him like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Just give us Grant Gustin, okay?
Right?
Like,
Give us Grant Gustin. Bring back Batgirl. You already fucking filmed it. But the other thing, you mentioned that Harley is half Jewish. And there was one controversy that came up in the first season of this, and that was the Penguins.
The Penguin episode.
The Penguin episode with the nephew. Was it his son or his nephew? I thought it was his nephew.
His nephew's bar mitzvah. I was just doing homework about this, like, over the last couple of days, knowing this podcast was coming up, because, there's part of me is like, I like people knowing that Harley's half Jewish, right? Like, I like people knowing that there's this really, really popular character out there with some Jewish heritage. And I was just reading interviews with the writers responding to fan reactions to that episode. You know, most of the writers are Jewish too.
Yes, absolutely.
And I was like, I think it was just self-depreciating humor that just landed wrong. But it did land wrong. There's no getting around that. So,
and I did find it a little bit interesting that caused such a controversy, but the character of Sal Boardman or Cy Boardman does not.
I know.
Especially, they have not gone, as we read in the comic, they have not gone as Cy Boardman as they can go Cy Boardman.
There is so much more Cy Boardman to be had.
The man has exploding bagels.
Bagel grenades, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a bagel this morning for breakfast in honor of our Brooklyn girl.
Nice.
Just a couple dashes of hot sauce, not too much.
So I can taste the cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got no dog in that fight.
Yeah.
You know, I'm definitely on the side of, yes, if it is offensive, we should be checking ourselves. But at the same time, we do need to understand people's backgrounds make their way into their art. And so if there was a Jewish scene that was self-deprecating written by a bunch of Jewish writers, like...
Isn't that... I mean, I've watched enough Aaron Sorkin stuff at this point in time that is self-deprecating kind of just the way that whole thing works.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of self-deprecating Jewish humor, yes. We go over that a lot in conversations, on Rhett Conversations, because Leah Cameron, my co-host there, very Jewish and very outspoken about it, but will be the first person to be like, we get to make those jokes. We've earned that right. Like, you know, which is fine. Totally fine. I'm not cool with people making Puerto Rican jokes. I love making Puerto Rican jokes. You know, and
I will just make white person jokes day in and day out.
Well, that's, yeah. I mean, because what consequences are you going to have?
Listen, I grew up in rural South Dakota. If I want to, you know, say someone's squealing like a fat Irish pig, then you know what? I'm a quarter Irish. Fuck off. My grandma was full-blooded. Piss off. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, on that note,
on that note.
So, Bear, other than issue 0 of this graphic novel, would you recommend it to our listeners? Honestly,
like, I didn't think it was a bad graphic, but I had a hard time reading it. Most of what's going on in it is just a ton of dialogue. While I thought there were good story elements, and there were some moments that I even laughed at, there were some moments I was falling asleep during. I actually have a note in here at one point about halfway through because it took me almost 4 hours to read. And I have a note in here that says, at this point, kind of feels like trying to watch Pineapple Express without being high. But then, you know, there were wonderful parts like the fight scene in the zoo, you know, and as we've seen in other graphics that we've read recently, like a fight scene in a zoo is just amazing. That's the
Punisher uses a polar bear,
right?
Yeah.
So I would be more than interested to hear about some of the other graphics that Loopy was talking about at the beginning of the episode that are better Harley graphics than this one, especially considering like all the other Harley stuff that we've done so far. This was not the introduction that I really
can't remember the name of the writer artist. Well, I can remember it, I just can't pronounce it. But he did Harleen.
Yeah.
It's the same artist.
Stephen Seljic, yeah, he's amazing.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Same artist that does Sunstone, which another great comic, but very adult. But Harleen is another one that I'd recommend. That is, taking a deep, dark look at Harley. I would put it even on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Like I said, I was trying to answer the question. Like, if you like the cartoon, which graphic novel would I recommend? Now, I do have a couple. If you like the cartoon, which trades in this series would I recommend as well? And there's a really funny run where Harley takes a great big shot at Deadpool.
Nice.
In the form of a new character called Red Tool, who uses like hardware store items as signature weapons, and he's obsessed with Harley. They date for a little while, and they do a lot of cracking jokes at Deadpool. And I almost recommended that one for this, but I was like, no, you kind of need the context of Hot in the City first before you'd like that one. But that one's really funny.
Okay, good to know. I will be checking that one out. Jen, A, are you going to keep reading? And B, would you recommend this to people that like the cartoon?
I enjoyed it, and I know that there might be better books. Harley, as a lover of the show, this really resonated. I really loved kind of the bone where the writers got personality, because I feel like it's different. She is on her own, but never on her. She's always surrounded by other characters.
Yeah, I'd be in the same boat. I completely agree with Loopy. Like, this was a great foundation for where Harley goes in the future. Like I said, I've read it before. I've read comics after this. And it all does kind of come back to this sets the foundation for why a lot of, like, how does she have her own building? Well, that's in this, this comic. Where the hell did that beaver come from? Well, it's kind of explained in this. She has a dog. She has several dogs, and it's all explained in this. Like, there will always be somebody that doesn't like some aspect of something. We've recently seen it with a goddamn trailer for a Dungeons and Dragons movie, and people lost their damn minds because they were like, "You can't turn into an owl bear." I'm like, "Yes, you can." And in fact, Loopy, you solved that problem.
I did. I wrote a homebrew feat for druids, and I stuck it up on D&D Beyond. It had something like 100 uses the last time I checked on it, and it's just a feat. You buy the feat, you can turn into owlbears. Cool, done.
That's all it takes. Like, this is a very highly mutable game. Like,
yeah,
all it takes is the original writers didn't think to maybe add in one advanced feat.
Bear played in a game that I played in where I played my one and only druid. And I chose my wild form to be a Goralin, 4-armed monkey. I probably shouldn't have been able to do that, but the DM was like, fuck it, this is funny.
But to be fair, he didn't give you the ability to wild shape into anything other than that, and you didn't get that ability until you were like 8th level or
something like that.
10th level or
but I had grown up in a forest that had Goralins,
so
I was like, so I'll turn into one of those. He's like, yeah, fuck it, let's do that.
And it's not like she turned into a beholder or anything. Like, an owlbear is not a big stretch for a druid.
Right.
Just not.
This has been our Geek Corner. But yes, I mean, I'm sure
it's only our second tangent of the episode. Like,
we're doing
so much better than our first one.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure there are people that don't like this cartoon or feel that it is not true to Harley. I don't understand. But you know what? Good on you. Just stay off the comment section of the internet.
I'll tell you though, for me, the thing that this has actually made me want to read more between both the comic and the animated is I want to go out and find some Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's some fantastic.
Stefan Seljic is working on a Poison Ivy series as a follow-up to the Harley.
Oh. There's also a new Poison Ivy trade or ongoing that just started. I want to say 3 months ago. I think they're only on issue.
Yeah, because while I love Harley and I think she is a great icon out there for many women, many gamers, many nerds in general, I think she's a great icon for not necessarily my aesthetic. And if I'm going to read up on something, I'd rather read up on Ivy.
So
seems a little more grounded, a little more level-headed for me.
A little more grounded?
Yeah, that's where I was going with that.
Well, and like, I just want to throw out this thing. Like, the art in the Harley comic is so fun and so good, and they put her in so many costumes. And I remember when, like, the first Suicide Squad movie came out and people were like, Harley's not in her costume, and I'm like, have you looked at the comic? She probably goes through 3 costume changes an issue.
She even says at one point,
I was going to say she does.
Yeah.
Like, how could you go through life wearing the same outfit every day?
Yes, she takes a shot at Batman.
And I feel like after the issue 0, it's important to point out that Chad Hardin was the artist.
Yes.
And that he does an amazing job throughout.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's very Saturday morning cartoon feeling, which is perfect.
But still with just enough touch of, I don't know, something in the cell shading, something in everything overall that just makes it just a touch more than that. Just gives it a bit more life.
Well, Loopy, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me. I love doing this.
Well, we will definitely have you back when we do some more fun DC stuff, since I know you are one of our go-to people when we have those DC questions. And I will definitely be hitting you up to geek out the fuck over Sandman, because it's so good.
Right, it's so good.
There will be multiple episodes of Sandman upcoming, I'm sure.
Probably, yeah, because that will be next season when we're doing more of a we do what we want.
Our favorites.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah, and in fact, this was moved up from that season because Harley is one of Jen's absolute favorites.
Yep.
And I love this cartoon. I love the comic. I'm really excited for a whole new generation of people to discover Harley Quinn. There is movie Harley that is being represented extremely well. That I'm excited that for people that find that. There's this, which I would say is closer to the spirit of Harley Quinn, the character. That again, if people find this, I'm really excited about it. Listen, if somehow Lady Gaga singing and dancing as Harley Quinn brings more people to Harley Quinn, which is going to happen in the Joker musical sequel.
I am super excited for Lady Gaga as Harley. Like, super excited.
I was not aware of this.
Oh, you didn't hear about it until just now? Yes. There's going to be a Joker sequel, the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. Lady Gaga is going to be Harley Quinn, and it's going to be a musical.
And Joaquin is reprising his role as Joker?
Indeed.
It's going to be super twisted.
I am here for this.
Yeah.
Super twisted.
Yeah. But yeah, in any incarnation.
This should be the most psychotic mental breakdown movie I've seen probably since Requiem for a Dream.
Well,
with less dildos.
Maybe. Well, and I guess we'll find out then.
Look, I live in a world where I can name like 5 actors between voice acting and on-screen acting who portrayed Harley Quinn, and it's a wonderful time to be a nerd.
Indeed.
Right.
And look up when it's going to air. We know what's next. Oh, I do. All right, everybody. Well, thank you, Loopy. But until then, take it away, Vandello.
Come with me, I'll tell a story that you might have heard before. Graphically novel, but the same old trouble. Villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same. Do 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 do. Come at me, and I'll show you something you ain't never seen before. Right or wrong, or can't we all just get along? My mask is no different than yours. Pretty pictures on the screen, but nothing's ever as it seems.
Nothing's ever as it seems.
Do 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 do. Hero or villain, loved or hated by millions. Maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right, but you don't want to see my bad side. do